So let's get started with Theology 101, Salvation. And the first place I want to go is in the personal book, and I want to make sure we're all on the same page. So I've pasted the website for you, and I'll do it again just for those who just came in the chat box. So let me get that pasted real quick. And what we want to do is get logged in to the Faith Life page, because that way, in fact, I'm jumping ahead of myself, you'll be able to see some of the rules that are available. So just go to faithlife.com/LearnLogos.com. Notice there's no period in there. -presentation, no space, /activity. Now, one of the things I like to do in every webinar is spend just a few moments on key resources that I believe are essential if you're going to study this topic. There's lots of books out there in Logos, and there's a lot of redundant information. And I've always said one excellent book is worth 10 mediocre books. And so in studying this topic and reading through the resources, you come across some gems, some great books that cover the topic in depth. And number one at the top of the list is Norm Geisler's. Let me just go ahead and open this resource up so you can see that at Logos. It's Systematic Theology, Volume 3, and this is part of a multi-volume set. And you can always see those if you go over to the right. You can see that the set is $99. It's well worth the penny. So even though half of it for one book, for double the price you get 3 more, is well worth it. I have thoroughly enjoyed Dr. Geisler's theology books, not only because of just the depth and breadth he covers, but the organizational layout and the way he deals with topics. And it's just fantastic. So down below we have Salvation, Part 2. And you can see it's an easy-to-read format, lots of cross-references, short paragraphs so you're not overwhelmed, an incredible organizational scheme you can see there at the left. And then throughout the book, there's these great comparison tables helping you understand the various views on a particular aspect. And so these are just all throughout the book. Nathan asked the question, of all the systematic theology books you own, which is your favorite for a student majoring in systematic theology? Boy, that's a tough question, Nathan, because I can never say one book does it all, but I can say there are a handful of books I constantly go to. There are a handful of books that I believe are must-have. This would be one of them, Systematic Theology, Norm Geisler. Another one that there's others you have to have, because if you don't have them, you'll be missing some information. Systematic Theology, Louis Berkhoff. It's an excellent resource. So many people have utilized that. So I put it's a little bit older, a little more technical, but nevertheless still excellent to have. Wayne Grudem is so popular, so if you don't have that, people are quoting him all the time. You got to have that. I have come to appreciate several others. Culver and McCune have been good. And then also Jack Cottrell, a little bit easier to read, not as in-depth. And then the last one is Louis Sperry Schaefer, just because of the depth and breadth. Those would be some of the ones that I would highly recommend. And my philosophy when it comes to systematic theology is you can never have too many systematic theologies. They're just phenomenal. And I'm going to show you later a feature in Logos Now that really helps you leverage these systematic theologies. And also there's a couple collections that you should be aware of. Logos has a systematic theology collection. It's 183 volumes. There's also a biblical theology collection, 21 volumes. There's a Princeton theology collection, 55 volumes. A little bit older, but nevertheless, a lot of excellent material. So if you're going to study the topic of salvation, you have to begin with the systematic theology books, because they have gone into great detail on this particular topic, and they have organized the information for you. So let me just open up, for example, Louis Berkhoff. And you can see here we have the doctrine of God, the doctrine of man, the doctrine of person, work of Christ, which notice not all of them will always say salvation. Like in this case, he says the doctrine of the application of the work of redemption. And so you can see the various table of contents, how it covers soteriology, which is the academic term for salvation, grace, the mystical union, conversion, faith, justification, sanctification, perseverance, and so forth. So this is important because to understand the topic of salvation, you have to understand all the various related topics. And let me say, if there's one topic that has a ton of information, this is the topic. I would say that of all the theological topics out there, nothing more has been written than on salvation, and nothing more has been more contested and controversial than the topic of salvation, which is absolutely crazy and also very sobering, because salvation is the key issue. Are you saved or are you not saved? And how do you get into the kingdom? How do you go to heaven? And this is what all the world religions argue over. This is what denominations have divided over. This is what separates individuals. And if you are going to go out there and proclaim the gospel and not understand the theology of salvation, you will be ill-equipped for the false teachings, the false doctrines, man's wisdom, and psychology that's out there. This topic can truly help you answer some significant questions that are pressing in the hearts and minds of lost people, as well as equip and strengthen the church. Okay, so I'm not going to spend too much time in looking through this. You've got the list on the screen. Now, another important resource in the studying of soteriology, as I said, the academic term, or salvation, are what I call general theological resources, like a dictionary. Theological dictionaries and encyclopedias are going to focus on the topic of salvation, give you some details that are going to be very helpful. General theological resources are resources that are going to be making some passing references on the topic. But there are dictionaries, theological dictionaries you want to focus on, like the Anchor Yale Bible Dictionary. And here's a good example of its breakdown. The Hebrew Bible, the New Testament, issues of interpretation, etc. These are good resources to get your appetite whet, to give you a wonderful overview of the topic before you study in depth. Another resource, which is now available in Logos Now, which is a monthly fee, you pay roughly $9 a month for it. They have a systematic theology cross-reference data set. So when you run a search, and we'll do some of these more later, but let me just run the passage guide, and I'll put in Romans chapter 8. You'll notice that in my passage guide, I have a systematic theology section. This comes with the Logos Now feature. And what it's going to do is it's going to show me the various theological themes that are available or mentioned in Romans 8. Now, if I were to narrow this down to, let's say, Romans 8:39 and get more specific, the list will shorten a little bit. Now, there's a lot of theology in Romans, so that's why this list is long. Now, what's nice about this is right away you can determine the theological themes. This is very powerful. So we could click on Christology. Then the Logos data set breaks down the various perspectives from a denominational standpoint. So what is the Adventist view of Christology in respect to Romans 8:39? Anabaptist, Baptist, etc. This is very helpful because now you can begin to see where the shades of meaning are, where the differences between these denominations, or what they have in common. There's also a section at the top right called Resource. When you click that, you now can look at those various groups, and now you can focus in on them and see where these resources land from a theological standpoint. So be aware of that. And a lot of these categories are determined by the author or the publishing company. And so be aware of that. Okay, so wonderful tool, only available through the Logos Now. One thing that is nice in the dataset book here, as you can see, is they do go through and kind of overview the various theological categories. I've added one more category, which is Cosmology, which focuses on the immaterial and material parts of the universe, which is really important, like trees and space and all that good stuff. And Bill mentioned he likes Wolfhart Pannenberg. Yeah, Pannenberg would be another good one to add. Systematic Theology, Wolfhart Pannenberg, another good resource to include. Again, with theology books, you want to have competing ideologies. This will help you explore the topics more thoroughly and more in depth, and help you understand the various issues and questions surrounding the various topics. Now, let's have some fun here. When you're studying theology, I think it's really important to organize your collections. And because theology is all over the place in Logos, if you don't organize your collections this way, you're just going to be overwhelmed by too much information. So let me have some fun here. I'm going to go ahead and paste the rule name into Faith Life. So I'm just going to do that right now. So you can see that we've got creating the systematic theology collection. That's one where you organize all your systematic theologies. Then I have a general theological collection. So let me go ahead and just post that rule. The journals, let me go ahead and give you this one. And then the last one, which is a lot more complicated, which is the theological dictionaries and encyclopedias. So with these rules in hand, as we'll explore tonight, it'll make life a whole lot easier for searching. Now, this next one, letter E, Soteriology Salvation, is just basically focused on the category of salvation. And then I have an historical theology collection. So those are some of the collections that we're going to use tonight. But organizing your library around collections makes it easier for you to focus your searches and get certain type of information back. Information in a systematic theology book is organized one way, where a theological journal is organized differently. The next thing I want to do in our studying is create a theological markup. So I'm going to go to Tools, and I'm going to go to Highlighting. Tools, Highlighting. And I've already created this in other presentations. If you got the Logos 6 videos, we cover this as well. But you can see I have the 13 theological themes, and there's that cosmology one. Now, salvation, I have here, number 10, I have a little cross. So if you haven't created this Theology Palette, you can download it for free. Just go to LearnLogos.com/free. So when you get to the free page, you'll scroll down and you'll see that there's a whole bunch of freebies there. And there is the 13 theological symbols. And so all these icons are there for you to download. It's all free. So with that being said now, if you haven't created the palette, you have to click New Palette first and type in the name Theology. That's what I recommend doing. Now, I've already created one, so I'll go ahead and delete this particular palette. Then once you've created the palette, just float your mouse over the palette name, click on the little triangle, and click Add a New Style. Very important, add a new style. Now, when you do that, you'll get this wonderful little box that'll open up. Now, I've already done this, so let me go to the salvation and edit it so you can see the information in there. So I typed in 10 space dash space salvation, and then I went to image. And here is where I basically click on the image, click choose a file, and navigate to my theological symbols. And I think I've got those somewhere in here. I'm not sure if I have those. Doesn't look like I do. I thought maybe I had them available. There we go. Highlighting symbols. And so there's the symbol for cross. I click open, and now it's been added as an image. And then I choose before. I like to put I used to put them in the margin. That's a good place to put them. Now I put them kind of right before the word, just a little bit easier. That way I can have multiple theological themes in a verse. If I put in the left margin and I have multiple themes, the images will overlap one another, and we don't want to do that. So by putting it before the phrase or the word, I will be able to have multiple themes. And pretty much that's all I do. I just give it a title, add an image, and I'm done. I click save, and now I have a theological highlight that I can use as I'm reading along. So for example, if I was to open up my New American Standard Bible, in fact, let's go to Romans 10:9. That's a good one to use. If you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. So I select the phrase, you'll be saved. I click on salvation, and now my cross has been added. Now, it looks like I've added 2 crosses, but the truth is it's really 1. But because the row of information goes on to the next line, and it's part of the highlight, Logos creates another symbol to let you know that that's part of that phrase. So very, very helpful tool there. One thing to notice, if you float your mouse over the palette and you click on the triangle at the right, you'll notice that it says Save In. And it normally saves to a note file, and that note file is whatever the name of your palette is, in this case, Theology. Now, you can click on that and save it to something else. It probably says palette-specific note file, which would be Theology. This is important because later, if we go and open up that note file, so let's go to Documents, and let's type in Theology. And in a moment, we'll see that there's a Theology Notes. And if we click on that, we can see all our theology markups with the cross references, which makes it pretty handy. You will be saved. There it is. Notice it says today. You can mark up with the palette and then come back to the note file and make some additional notes and so forth. Very powerful tool in Logos. So as you're studying, you're marking up, which is a very important strategy, in studying theology, because you're going to read and find a lot of fascinating and important information, and marking that up is a sure way to make sure you can find it in the future. I added a link here, bing.com. If you're looking for some symbols, we could type in, for example, cross. Then we would click on images. Notice that they have a safe search. I would put it on strict. Also, you can click on public domain, and that way any image you get is free. And that way you're ensuring yourself that you're not breaking any copyright laws. And so this can give you some great ideas for various images that might serve your purposes. So wonderful tool that Microsoft has put out with the Bing search engine. So let's go back to the personal book.